Hi everyone. Okay, today I just want to say a few words on a film from 1971, which is Mr. Forbush and the Penguins. Now, you may not have seen this one. It stars John Hurt and Hayley Mills. I'm not going to be defending this one as being a great movie, but I do think it has a number of things that are interesting about it. So, John Hurt in this one plays a rather aimless, womanizing biologist who's in London trying to romance his girlfriend Tara, played by Hayley Mills, and he gets an assignment to go to Antarctica so as to study penguins, and he's going to be staying in Ernest Shackleton's derelict hut so that he can do this. Now, this is really quite an interesting movie. Definitely not a successful one. It's a movie that's in two halves. So we have the beginning of the movie that's very much about Hurt's character trying to romance Hayley Mills and get her into bed, and she's playing her usual kind of a virginal self here. But then we get to Antarctica and it's all about studying the penguins. But it's all done in quite an unusual way. So you'd think that this might be a family kind of movie, but the actual sequences in Antarctica are really quite sort of distressing at times. The sequences filming the penguins are done by a Swedish documentarian, but we see John Hurt sort of running around the ice and actually capturing penguins in awkward manners at times. And we get a lot of footage as well of birds that take hold of penguins young and kill them and destroy them. And then by the end of the movie, John Hurt's character is going quite mad, and he actually builds a large catapult so that he can just throw rocks at birds that are trying to attack the penguins and yells "die, die" at them. So it all gets quite distressing. Couple that with the fact that whilst he's staying in the hut in Antarctica, he has a calendar on his wall that shows lots of women in sort of fetishistic poses. So yeah, this isn't quite a family movie. And it certainly seems as though the movie went through a few difficulties whilst it was being made. So this film is produced by British Lion, and Roy Bolting was part of British Lion, and he was married to Hayley Mills at the time. So the beginning of this film apparently needed to be completely reshot. He thought that it was terrible, and so that's where he brought Hayley Mills in. Hayley Mills at the time, she'd had a couple of movies that hadn't been successful, one of which I actually talked about just recently, which was Take a Girl Like You. That had underperformed at the box office, and she was really looking at the time, here's her biography, she was really looking at the time to try and escape her kind of virginal image and the roles that she'd been playing and actually get onto the stage, and she was wanting to do some Chekhov and Ibsen plays, and she was actually set to work on Ibsen's The Wild Duck, but Roy Bolting, her husband, persuaded her to get involved with the shooting of Mr. Forbush and the Penguins to try and salvage the movie, and so they completely reshot the beginning of the film so that she could be in it. Now, the screenplay for the film was written by Anthony Shaffer, and it was his first screenplay. And if that name isn't familiar to you, then perhaps these films will be, because the very next film that he went on to do was Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy. And then after that came his perhaps most celebrated screenplay, which was for Sleuth, starring Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier. And then after that, he did the screenplay for the famous The Wicker Man, starring Christopher Lee. But I think it's fair to say that his script for Mr. Forbush and the Penguins probably didn't end up being on screen quite as he wrote it. Star John Hurt had also made another film in 1971, and that was 10 Rillington Place, a really excellent movie directed by Richard Attenborough, who was also a friend of Roy Bolting and also a friend of Brian Forbes. And Brian Forbes at the time was managing EMI, who were doing the funding for this picture, Mr. Forbush and the Penguins, and it ended up being the death note for Brian Forbes as the head of EMI, because this film really underperformed at the box office and he got sacked. Interestingly, John Hurt starred alongside Judy Geeson in 10 Rillington Place, and it's actually Judy's sister Sally Geeson who has a small role in Mr. Forbush and the Penguins. And another actor who appears in this is Dudley Sutton, and he plays another biologist who also goes to Antarctica, to a separate region, so as to study wolves. Now, Dudley Sutton, when I was growing up, was an actor that I didn't really like too much, and I found him quite creepy, but it's only been in more recent years when I saw him in Sidney J. Fury's movies from the 60s, The Boys and The Leather Boys, that I really changed my opinion on him, and I really quite like him now as an actor. So yeah, he's not bad in this as a supporting role. There's also Joss Ackland in this as well. Here's the film again with an alternate poster. But yeah, ultimately, it has to be said, this is a real mixed bag of a movie. Not very successful, but certainly interesting, like I say. So we do get this first half of the movie with the romancing of Hayley Mills' character, and she's certainly, her usual charming and beautiful self in this. And then the Antarctic scenes are interesting to watch. But yeah, certainly there's a bit of cruelty there and just a strange tone to the movie. So overall, the tone of the movie doesn't work. And it was kind of confusing to see what kind of audience this was really aimed at. But for my money, a much more successful film that kind of covers similar ground is this one, Never Cry Wolf, which is directed by the great Carol Ballard, who also did The Black Stallion, and starring Charles Martin Smith. This one's set in the Arctic, and it concerns a biologist who goes to study wolves. But yeah, just the storytelling in this one and the tone of it is just much more successful, so I really enjoy this movie. But yeah, ultimately, Mr. Forbush and the Penguins is quite a strange one in the career of John Hurt and Hayley Mills. So yeah, let me know. Have you seen this movie? Any thoughts, any comments? Leave them below. Thanks very much for watching this video. Hope to see you again. All the best to you. Bye-bye.